There's always a better way to do what you're doing right now. So be grateful. Now they're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to do, right? And I was like, no, programmatic is where my heart is. Amen. Welcome to another episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. We have a special guest today, Gen Braine. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am really looking forward to our conversation because we're going to talk about some pretty exciting things, including training and talent within the digital media space, how to learn in programmatic when you're just first starting. Maybe we'll talk about how to navigate the industry as an evergreen person, I'm going to say junior person. And then we'll highlight your successes, especially coaching. I think you're a mentor for Bloom UK. Yep. We're both in the Women in Programmatic Network. So we'll talk about that. But I think we need a solid official introduction. So would you mind letting us know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. I work as a client partner at TPA Digital. TPA Digital is a digital consultancy. We used to be the Programmatic Advisory. I suspect that's what you might know us as before. We updated the brand earlier in the year as we broadened our remit from programmatic to, hoping to be able to consult in PPC and social. But yeah, that's where I'm from, and, been in programmatic industry for the last sort of 7 years or so.
Nice. We I think we came across because Wayne had posted I think he had posted a newsletter, and I read it and I reached back out to you and I said, you like somebody badass from TPA. So here we are. So thank you for the introduction. But before you got to TPA Digital, talk to us a little bit about your journey. Like, did you always want to work in programmatic advertising?
No, I actually fell into programmatic by sheer chance, actually. I started at Tesco earlier on in my career, and I started I think it was a paid search and affiliates team. But I was at Tesco at a time the business was going through quite a lot of change. So after a few months of working there, the business restructured, and I was moved into the programmatic team. So I'd actually been not struggling to get my head around paid search, but I just wasn't getting to grips with it. And then I was moved into the programmatic team, and it all just started to make sense. I was like, there's a really nice creative part to it. I get to report on everything that's going on. But, although it wasn't a move by choice, I don't know whether it was meant to be, but I've been in programmatic sort of ever since, and it wasn't on purpose, but I always aimed to be in digital, I suppose.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like to call search people the dark side. Move from the dark side, you have a life. But I know every single search person that's going to listen to this, like, in their eyes, whatever. I like to say that. I say what I said. But thank you for sharing. So how would you define programmatic advertising, or maybe your day-to-day, right? As at TPA, like, how would you define what you do on a daily basis to a 5-year-old?
Well, they're two very different things. How to describe programmatic. I always used to joke to my friends that, those annoying ads that follow you around when you've looked at something for 10 whole seconds, that's probably something I've done. But then I was like, that's probably not a good thing, because I'm giving what I do a bad name, and there's actually so much more to it than that. It's much more advanced. There's so much more that goes into it. But what I do on like a day-to-day basis is we're working with different clients on a variety of different projects, and the aim is to be impartial with that advice we're giving to them. We don't have any relationships with media partners, so it allows us to be objective and sort of strategic in the recommendations we're making. But those projects are whatever they need to be working on it. We've done RFP processes for an FMCG brand, so running that process for them, finding out what their requirements are. Sometimes it's entering sort of brands with a programmatic audit, so again, just getting to the nuts and bolts of their programmatic activity and being able to suggest improvements for them as well. Then things like transparency are important now to brands, or how can they be buying media more efficiently, things like that. Are they working with the right media partners? But it really depends on the brands and where they are in that journey.
That's really cool, because so I am also in consulting, but I niched very much into training piece.
Yeah.
Once in a while, like a client of mine will reach out for staff augmentation, right, to fill in the blanks with a position that they need. And what if you're not, and whoever's listening, if you're not familiar with staff augmentation, it's basically this. Your programmatic ninja just left, and you have all this work and you could probably do it, but you shouldn't. So you reach out to me as a consultant, and I have a team of strategists, and that plays into the project. And while this person is just keeping everything afloat, augmenting their staff, I help them either find a new person or train a junior maybe that is not yet ready to be a senior, and vice versa. So it's kind of like filling in the blanks. So TPA does just the recommendation of everything. Like sometimes you just need to call your best friend and ask some question, like for real. And your best friend is going to keep you accountable. They're going to be for real with you, and they're going to share everything that you need to share. So I really like that aspect, because I don't think it's, I think it's needed so much in this industry. And we rely a lot on our partners, like the vendor tech, their providers, to educate us about the industry, and not so much on people like yourself, consultant, other expert that basically have touched different sources to get educated. So let's talk about, training into the field. Like, what is your perspective of training? Maybe tell us what's so important from a personal perspective too, and how you guys do it.
Yeah, definitely. I always think it's important to look at both sides. Like you said, that practical side, understanding what programmatic is and how to understand what a good media plan looks like, but also being able to present to sort of different stakeholders. It's almost finding that balance of being mathematical, being able to get into the nuts and bolts of programmatic, whilst also being able to actually be quite a good people person and being able to present to different levels of people. So it's really quite a hard balance, actually, I think, of finding the right skills for the job sometimes.
That's for real. And educating, like, what was it? I was somewhere on Instagram, and there was a meme about, go get the new job, because the budget to hire new talents is more than the budget to train internal talent. And I thought, is this even a thing? And I did some research, and I was like, wow, apparently this is common. And so what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think in one of my jobs, I used to see the recruitment fees they pay some of these agencies. I was like, guys, just train up some of your people. The amount you're paying these agencies is insane. But I think the industry's changed a lot in the last few years. What, like you said, there's, I don't know whether I've just been around a little bit longer now and I find all these things now, but, like at TPA, we've got our free academy course to, just introduce people to those fundamentals. I know you've got your course as well for those sort of nuts and bolts. And like you mentioned before, all the vendors have got their own sort of not university courses, but they've got their courses to try and introduce you to probably more their platforms, but ultimately educate you on the nuts and bolts of programmatic, which I just don't remember having when I first started. So I think it's come on a long way with the training, and there is so much if you go looking for it, or even this podcast, there's lots of other things out there that just weren't there before, which is really exciting. And it's just really shown how it's grown over the last few years.
Yeah, I do agree. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why we created the course, because so I mentioned we offer training and workshops, and so we kind of standardize that training for individual perspective, so that you can sign up, pay for the course, and then get the training on your own time. It's on demand. It's lessons and videos. And I'm realizing the amount of impact it has, and I'm like, wow, if I had this course back in 2012 when I first started, 2013, give or take, wow, it would have been such different things. Like, I think I still would have had trials, not to mention challenges, like trials, but I think it would have been different because I would have had a different perspective. And I don't think what we're saying, if you're listening, we're not saying that getting educated from your partners is bad. It is great. Actually, even if you take my course or if you take TPA's course, I still recommend that you continue educating yourself. You continue investing in your self-development journey. And that includes taking as many, courses as you can. So if you're working with a data provider or a DSP or SSPs that offering some education lesson or courses, it's still very, very beneficial because the information may be somewhat the same, but you'll always have that focus. So my course is focused on trader on the buy side. I know TPA's course, I've looked into it. You guys are really focused on fundamentals, but also you have some really great content for publishers as well, which I think is bomb. So every course you might listen to some lessons and be like, I know about it. Cool, you know about it. But there's always something else that you can learn more of. So I know that I always say that on the podcast, and the listeners probably like, dang, every single one of them, she's going to say it. But here it is. I like to mention how I listened to Chris Do on a previous podcast, and he was saying like, if you want to learn something, you got to teach it. So if you think you know this information, start teaching it to others. And that can look as easy as like, let's say just posting on LinkedIn, like I just read this article and this is what I did, right? This is how I'm understanding this. What are some actionable insight you can share that's going to teach somebody else how to do it? So I think that's why I love y'all's newsletter. Sorry, not news. That's different. That is old school right there.
Old school,
your monthly newsletter. I have a handful of newsletters that I'll sign up. And y'all are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So let's talk a little bit more about learning in the industry, right? So, so talk to us about how to navigate as a junior. Like, because I'd love to hear about your experience. Like, oh, back in the days when I started, these were the challenges, but now they're facing different struggles. And also, I'd love to hear more about Bloom. So maybe this is the opportunity to really talk about the importance of mentorship.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. It's twofold. I can remember sitting there at the beginning of my career and moving into programmatic, and you'd be sitting with our agencies with lots of people in a room, and I wouldn't feel comfortable or know how to challenge them for, like we were saying before, I don't know. How do I know what a reasonable CPM is? Or how do I know which audience to buy? Or why have you picked that partner to put onto the media plan? And it's only after all these years that I can sit there and go, my gosh, this is an outrageous CPM. Why have they chosen that partner? And feeling confident enough to do that. We were actually just discussing in the office the other day, a brand media partner the other day. Sorry, had a CPM. We're like, oh my God, that's outrageous. How can they justify that? It's what planet were they think? What are they on about? And sometimes it does take time. It takes time sometimes with these things. But maybe earlier on in your career, you can have a think about some of those questions and building a bank up so you just feel confident that you've got them. And it might be that they're quite broad so that you don't feel completely in the dark to start with. It might be that you just say to them, why have you picked those partners? If you're working with an agency anyway, what made you pick those partners for this brand? And as time goes on, once you get the reports back, the data that comes back, which is what's great about programmatic, is you can sit there and say, well, actually partner A performed really well on that previous media plan. Why have you not put them in here, for example? Or I think the CPM was, it might be that, again, depending on the vertical you're in, the CPM was X amount. Why is it now more? And it might be because Christmas is around, or the seasonality changes, therefore the CPM changes. But starting to build up that knowledge from the data you can get, which you can get as soon as the campaign ends. You can get a report out of a campaign straight away, start to have a look at it and analyze it and see how it's performed, so that you've got that to help you in the future. I think from that side of it's really great. But like you said, on the mentorship side of thing, don't be scared to ask those questions. We were all there, believe me, we were all there once upon a time, and no stupid question is a stupid question, because we probably asked it at some point as well.
I love that. I'm going to say that again.
Yeah, like you said, whether it's just your colleagues in the office, being comfortable with them, if you don't feel comfortable in your agencies, or there are, again, groups around, like Bloom's great for just reaching out to people if you've got some questions and being comfortable to ask those in a safe space for women in advertising. And it might be, and we're from all sorts of backgrounds in marketing communications. It's such a broad industry, but it might be some of those softer skills, like I'm really struggling to present this or to place this. It might be actually something really broad, and they'll be there to support you with that. Or if it is something more specific, hopefully there'll be someone from Programmatic in there that you can ask that more sort of granular question, just to help you with your development. So I think that's really important as well, just asking those questions.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So you are a mentor, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening and being like, oh crap, I don't know if I can access to Bloom, right? Because Bloom is in the UK, and okay. And so it's for the UK specifically. If anybody's listening and thinking, I really think I could benefit from mentorship, from being a mentor, or having a mentor, what are like three things you can tell them to those people why to consider? And then maybe another 3 things for like why it's so important, right? How to get started.
Yeah, I think that's a good question about how to get started. Actually, I've always been so passionate about it, of mentorship. Like I do work with those different women through Bloom to help support them with their careers and where they want to go. And likewise, me having a mentor is helpful for me in my career and progressing within that. A lot of businesses do have them within their own, ask your business if there's a mentorship scheme. Some of the larger sort of brands do often have that. If not, don't be scared to ask someone within the business. Go and ask someone in your business. If you don't have them, look, I'm probably at a more senior level, but to help you ask those questions, and they can hopefully give you a subjective sort of answer back to you. That's always been a good start. And I've rarely come across someone who says no. I can't think of any stats off the top of my head. I'd have to go and do them, but there are some really sort of damning or good stats, I suppose, to show what mentoring does to someone's career. So I would recommend it to everyone, and it's just finding that confidence to ask someone in the first place. But I'm sure any of the senior leaders in anyone's business, or even just another manager within that team, would be more than happy to help you within your own business.
Got it. So how do you think somebody that wants to be a mentee or have a mentor should reach out if they see somebody? Let's say we see somebody on LinkedIn that we want to really learn from that one-on-one perspective. How can we reach out to that person? Like, has anybody just reached out to you outside of Bloom and say, listen, I really want to be your mentee. Can you do that? Like, what are the proper steps? What do you think? How do you think they should go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I hope something that COVID's given us is taken some of those barriers down. Why do we need to meet face to face? You're in the States and I'm in the UK, and we're doing something great like this. That's cool. It is hard and terrifying to reach out to people on LinkedIn, I think. And I think that's half the battle, isn't it? But I've always been a big believer in, what's the worst that could happen? I'll either not respond or say, no, I'm really sorry, I just don't have the time. I would always try and fit you in, but you just don't know what's going on. But hopefully someone would always be honest with you and get back to you. Just say to them, hi, I really love your career, looks really, really great. I'd love to explain a bit about yourself, maybe where you are in your career, and I'd love to get some advice from you or some mentorship from you because of XYZ. Because maybe something along those lines. And I'm sure reaching out for a mentorship, most people would be more than happy. It's not like you're trying to get a sales pitch into someone on LinkedIn, is it?
Yeah, I think I also find it very helpful when you're pitching to find a mentor. Just literally what Jen said, just introduce yourself, tell them I'm in my first year and I'm looking to grow. and I love your content. Like, even if they're in a leadership position, I always say that it's nice to hear when you have impact in someone's life. So let them know your content has an impact in my life, or, heard Jen on the podcast say this, and I thought it was helpful. So here it is. And even sometime I recommend, if being funny is you, right, is part of your authentic self, then be funny. Like, sometime when I pitch a big client and I'm like, you know what, I just heard that I got to shoot my shot. So here it is. I'm gonna shoot my shot. Let's do this. So sometimes just having a little bit, just doing it, you just got to get started. And the hardest part, it's just that. It's not asking to get started. It's that first step. So I love what you said. I think that's really important. I had unofficial mentors, and I realized them years after that they are considered mentors. And I'm really grateful. Like, it's literally people that have reached out over my career and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this salary? What do you think about this interview? What do you think about this client pitch? So I definitely think it's needed. And I always say that you put yourself in a room where you feel uncomfortable, so that you get to learn from these others, because there's power and discovery in being uncomfortable, because then you're training your body for something new. So it's easier to get to do new things and challenge yourself. So get yourself a mentor. I love the conversation. I wish we had more time for the conversation, but let's move into our closing segments, where I ask very, very specific questions, such as, can you share one fun fact about yourself?
Like I was saying to you before, this is always such a hard one. I always lead. I'm a bit of a crazy cat lady. I love cats. Every big cat, small cats, whatever it is. I've only got one cat. I'm not allowed any more at home.
That's funny. A crazy cat lady. Oh my gosh, that's so fun. All right, so let me ask this. Actually, since we were just talking about mentorship, do you have anybody that, and you can give names because we want to give them a shout out. Have you had anybody that maybe most recently, or maybe it was the very first time you realized, like, I want to do this, that really inspired you? So, I like Oprah because, not because she's Oprah, but she literally, every time she opens her mouth, there's a lesson, a life lesson. And then most recently, I came across this badass woman called Rachel Rogers, and she teaches women how to build their business to a 7-figure business, and small business owners like myself. So I just love how authentic she is, how truly herself she is, and how she's just saying, like, hey, if clients don't accept me, then they cannot work with me. And I think that takes a lot of balls to admit, right? Like, if you don't accept me, I cannot professionally work with you. And I think that takes a lot. So I would consider them almost a mentor in this moment, right? I don't have a call with them set up every time, but they're influencing how I make decision now. Can you share maybe, and if it's current mentors, feel free to share if you want to. Can you share maybe one or two person that when you listen to them, or every time you read about them, you watch them, you're like, dang, that's dope.
Yeah, no, definitely. I do need to get a new mentor. I'm sitting here going, I love mentoring people, but I need to sort out my own mentor and sort of my own development. But I always love the stuff Simon Sinek, and I'm going to crucify his surname, says. I just love his stuff, and his leadership and his mentorship, and just how he approaches everything. Like you said, I'm never going to have a session with him, but when he puts things onto LinkedIn or Instagram, if I'm following him, you're just like, yeah, that's it. That just makes sense. And I love that social is moving in a way that we can try and be our more authentic selves. And I follow again, not necessarily a mentorship, I follow a girl on Instagram, and she does she's an independent providing legals for small businesses again, but she's so real with it. She's like, I had sort of a bad day today, or actually I've been in client back-to-back meetings today, or actually I've been juggling my 2-year-old today. Well, and she's sharing that on her sort of professional Instagram as well. And it's really nice just to be so real with it,
No, that's so real. Like, I appreciate that. I follow a handful of like really strong women on Instagram because, you know, they're not in our field, but it's just like, wow, it's
No.
just nice and refreshing to hear some, like, it's so real. And I feel like it can really, I feel like any of these people I just mentioned, I can sit down with them and just have like a really legit conversation with like no problem. Like when you're there. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for mentioning. And yeah, we're gonna challenge you to find yourself a mentor because like you always need, this is just like, I don't know if you heard this phrase, but coach need a coach. Like nobody, if you have met somebody 100%. That's like, I don't need a coach, I don't need to learn this, run away. Like, no, I think that mentality that you know it all is not healthy for them or for you in your environment. So run. So yeah, we're gonna find yourself a mentor. If anybody's listening to this, she is accepting application. What would be the perfect mentor for you though? What would you look into? Maybe share things.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like we always sit here and preach these things, but do you actually practice what you preach half the time? You know, someone to push me out of my own comfort zone. Like I've always had a saying of like, if you're the most I think it's something, if you've got the most knowledge in the room, you're in the wrong room sort of thing. So it's that point to, you know, someone to push me to just go and do those things. What's the harm in writing that first message for, like we were mentioning with the mentees before, and go and set up those things that you want, those sessions with those groups for coaching that you want to do. So yeah, I think it's someone to push me out of my comfort zone and to get the confidence just to do those things. Absolutely. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. That's what I told my mentee. She's a recent grad, and she started her first ad jobs, and she's super excited, move across the country to get to that job, and she loves it. And she's really amazing. Like I was like, when I was 23 or 24, whichever she is, like I was not thinking about all this stuff. I just wanted to go home and just like watch TV or do this. And she's like really determined, right, about her future. So I told her, just the fact that you have a mentor like sets you up for success. Like you're way beyond this. Stop, you know, don't stress. And so the biggest thing I tell her is just that, like, just keep educating yourself, like keep reading books. We're big readers anyway in the family. So that's why when you said Simon Sinek, I was like, oh, Start With Why is one of my favorite books. I have it here. But yeah, so we thank you for dropping by. This was so amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Anybody wants to reach out to you and ask question, work with you, be a mentor, ask you to be a mentee, their mentor, how can they do that?
I guess reach out to me on LinkedIn, or more than feel free to email me. But yeah, I think LinkedIn is always a good start if you want to reach out with anything.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll have Jen's information in the show notes and the description of this podcast or the video on YouTube if you're watching. As always, thank you for joining us for another week of Programmatic Digest podcast. We appreciate and love you and have a wonderful day.